Hello, everybody. Christian from Treasure Town here, and today I'm speaking with Travis or Travis543 on eBay, but we're going to be going over error coins and 10 pieces of advice for collecting them. He's been a long time error collector for multiple decades, has a ton of experience with it, and we had reached out after I was interested in using one of his images in a Treasure Town video. So now he's here, ready to talk some error collecting tips. So thanks so much, Travis, for being a part of this video.
Thank you for having me.
So I guess, we had gone over like a little list that you had provided me. I tried to put together 10 slides that show like the number or whatever, and then the tip, and then below just sort of like some things for viewers to look at different types of errors. Not necessarily going to always talk about the errors in the photo, but, it looks like number one's understanding the minting process. So, how do you see that as being important?
I think it's extremely important, especially if you are going to focus or specialize in error coins, that you really do have to have an understanding of the minting process, so you know how certain errors get created, what types of things can go wrong or combinations of things to make, really eye-popping errors at times. And it's really, really important so you can determine what's a mint-made error versus a coin that's been damaged or even intentionally damaged to resemble a legitimate error.
Gotcha. So, one question maybe as a follow-up, are there any really good resources that you sort of learned from?
The Error Coin Encyclopedia, which is a book that was put out by the late Arnold Margolis and co-authored by Fred Weinberg, really goes into depth on the whole minting process, really from start to finish. So, from blanking, making planchets, how the dies are made, how the presses function, how the mint even releases coins to the public. There's quite a bit of information in that book, and that's actually how I learned when I first started out in errors.
Awesome. Anything else before we move on to the next tip?
No, I don't think so.
So that one being buy the book before the coin, a classic coin collecting piece of advice, but I'm sure it applies here. And yes. I know that was like a little bit of a story. Maybe you could share in terms of how you did it, even though it wasn't in relation to errors, but
sure. So when I first got the idea that I might want to buy a coin, I went into a coin shop, and the guy really didn't want to sell me a coin, but wanted to sell me a red book, and told me to look it over, which at the time, being a newbie, I didn't really understand how good of advice that was. And then I saw the couple of pages of error coins in the back of the book, and that was pretty much it. I decided that that's what I wanted to collect. And then that obviously made me want to research more. So I bought, more books, what little there is about error coins. And I think also, just looking at auctions and dealers' websites and looking at prices and trying to get myself familiar with what errors are generally priced at, so I would know, not to overpay or recognize maybe a good deal when one comes your way. So basically educating myself about errors before diving in with a lot of money.
Definitely. And that makes sense. And, it's super important. It can sort of ease your way in, maybe buying a few coins that you might overpay or, miss a little bit in the early steps, maybe not some super high dollar ones, but definitely
Right.
having that base is super important. It sort of brings us into the next topic, where the coin in front of us actually does relate specifically in terms of having a good feel for real rarity that you had mentioned. And that would go with buying the book and doing the research. I don't know if you have any comments. We could talk about this one, but just in general, sort of how you
Sure.
discern real rarity versus something like the coin in front of us, which is still rare, but less maybe than the 1979 P Jefferson nickel in this situation.
Yeah, certain errors by type. Let's use this example as, well, I mean, it's off center, but it's a wrong planchet as well. In that, in terms of nickels on cent planchets, 1980p is the most common date. And the story is that an entire bin full of cent planchets was fed into a nickel press in 1980 and then was released without being caught. So the vast majority of, well, not the vast majority, but a high quantity of nickels on cent planchets will be dated 1980p for that reason. So other dates, even though it's the same error, are going to be more rare and really should command a higher price. And this is also true of any error dated past 2002, because the mint has new presses and they really improved their quality control, so errors just don't come out like they used to. So pretty much any error on a coin dated 2002 and after is automatically more rare than something before 2002, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
And then just certain, and obviously errors are, since they happen accidentally, some things are more rare than others, and a lot of it is just kind of immersion in the market and seeing what's out there, and you kind of get a feel for what's more rare versus more common. I think another example I could bring up is just generic off-center cents. For whatever reason, 1969 P is one of the rarest off-center dates of cents to come across. And for whatever reason, they just, didn't make that many that year. So if you were looking to assemble a date set of off-center cents, a 1969 is going to be one of the hardest to get, even though other dates from that era, say 68 or 1970, are much more common. So it's just one of those things,
Yeah, and that also makes me wonder, as a little bit of a tangent follow-up, are a lot of people collecting, and we'll talk about something that might be similar to this in point number 10, but do you think a lot of people do like date runs, or are there enough people sort of collecting multiple examples where the 1980 is significantly less valuable in the struck on cent planchets versus something a year off, or same thing with the 69? Or do you think a lot of error collectors, from your experience, are they more scattered, maybe doing a type set, so to speak, of different errors or something like that?
Yeah, I know, and I've talked to people that assemble sets, like they want a date and mint mark set of say Lincoln cents struck on dime planchets, or a date and mint mark set of off-center cents. I know another guy who does Lincoln clips of every date and mint mark. And yeah, I think that if you're trying to assemble a set, you're probably more aware of what's hard to find, versus somebody that's just I don't know, say if you want to have a denomination set, so I want a nickel through dollar all struck on a cent planchet, and I don't care what date it is, so
makes sense.
Yeah.
If we go to the next one, where to buy error coins, that's obviously really important.
Yes.
Sometimes, it's auction houses. Maybe you can get a good deal in a local coin shop, or maybe they'll be way overpriced. But how do you think about purchasing errors?
Me personally, I tend to gravitate more towards auction formats like Heritage or eBay. Error dealers that are out there are definitely a good spot, and they're usually willing to take a want list from you. So if you're looking for something specific, they'll often say, let me know what you're looking for, and if I can get it, I'll get in touch with you. Coin shops, generally speaking, a lot of them have no interest in errors. They have little to no knowledge about them and don't really want to deal in them. But oftentimes, you might be able to get a good deal because they might have something that they picked up, in a larger collection where somebody just had an error or two, but they mainly collected, normal regular coins, and you might be able to get something really nice. And I have, but obviously, being that they usually don't specialize in errors, they might wildly overprice something just because, they don't really even take the time to try to figure out, what a fair retail price might be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to also, when I think of error coins, and since a fair amount of people probably don't own too many error coins that will watch this video, I'd assume a good one to start out with that is sort of clearly an error, but pretty cheaply priced might be like an off-center Lincoln cent, just also another
Definitely.
sort of quick thing, and buy that on eBay. I'd assume that's like maybe the way to do it if somebody wanted to spend $10.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, you can get off-center cents very inexpensively because they're probably the most common error that you're gonna find just because of how many cents get made. And yeah, you can usually get them pretty inexpensively just to if you just want to have an error in your collection. So yeah, definitely.
Awesome. I think sort of going with that, it's one thing to buy them, then the other, whether you're selling or just sort of understanding how something should be priced so that you can accurately purchase them. How do you price error coins?
Yeah, that's a that's a tricky one because obviously a lot of published price guides exist for normal coins, but not for error coins. These days, I mainly go by, what I've observed in the market through auctions or what dealers are asking. So for me personally, it's a lot of experience, just that I kind of know, about what something should be priced at. I would say if you were beginning to get into collecting, I would definitely observe. Obviously, heritage is a good way to research past prices. If you see some nice errors on eBay, you can take a look at those, see what's sold. If you know how to do the advanced search function of sold items, you can kind of get a good idea. Mike Byers with Mint Error News, he has a price guide on his website that's pretty good. It even covers, real dramatic rarities like the one that we're looking at here, this Franklin $50 double denomination. Yeah, a lot of it, I think if you specialize in errors, you really have a good idea of what the pricing should be. Something I've noticed is that certain times, certain error types become more popular. I've noticed lately in the last few years that CUDs, aka die breaks, have become more popular in years past. Double multiple strikes have become very popular. Well, more popular. They've always been popular, but I've noticed an increase in prices over the last few years. So sometimes things change, and that's, I guess, if you're really serious about errors, you sort of, you notice the ebb and flow of the market and how things change. But overall, at least in my experience, the prices just keep going up.
Makes sense. Yeah, no, it'd be interesting. We could probably talk for a long time, and hopefully we'll get a chance to get into maybe a mini history of the rare, the error market in a different video. But I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of pricing them, sort of factoring into that, and maybe how also you think about, what has appeal. How does error coin condition and grade factor into things? And also, is it cool to have a really circulated error that clearly was not pulled out of circulation for a long time? But maybe we'll start with the basics, and I'm curious.
Sure.
Details.
I guess speaking as, excuse me, somebody who specializes in errors, I obviously, like any other coin collector, I like my stuff to be in nice condition. And for more common errors, you can be a little more picky if you'd like in terms of condition and grade. But then on the other hand, if you're looking at, some more classic older pieces, say, especially from, let's say, the 1800s, where there's very few errors to go around, that sometimes if you want something, you're just going to have to accept that that's the condition that it comes in. And sometimes that's true of extremely rare modern pieces, which I'm trying to think of an example. Something that is maybe a dual error combination where, that might be the only example that exists. So if you want it, you're going to have to jump on it at that condition, because you're not going to find another one.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of your questions there was about something being circulated, and I do kind of like sometimes where in the past, say 100 years ago, nobody really valued errors at all. So, it would be spent, and a nickel back then is worth a lot more than today. So you might not even have a choice and say, well, I need to spend this because, I need to eat. But yeah. I do like sometimes when they have some nice, genuine wear, and just makes you think, how many people's hands that might have passed through.
Makes sense.
And what did they think about it?
Yeah. I wonder, do you think that there's like is there a low ball error market at all?
Not really. No, not like in regular coins. Actually, they'll usually sell at a discount.
Good to know.
Say in, I don't know, good. But that's actually, if you were looking for something more classic and you didn't want to pay a lot of money, that's a good way to get into something that's nice if you're willing to accept that it's, more circulated.
Awesome. I think that probably covers it. Then there's the whole third-party grading and certification. I wasn't sure sort of where you wanted to take this, but obviously really important. Maybe also helps avoid, one of our next points, as you had mentioned, with some counterfeit. Yeah. What would you want to tell a newcomer to the aerospace about how third-party grading relates to it?
I think if you're gonna spend, a couple $100 or more on an error, most of the time they're going to come certified, because that's just kind of how the coin market has progressed, and errors are no different. I think at least for me, I like having them graded. It's nice to have the description on the slab and the protection, and they're a lot easier to sell. And I think that third-party certification in the past, when they started certifying errors, really maybe got errors a little bit more, I guess I'll say a little more mainstream, but maybe a little more acceptable to coin collectors in general. Being historically, error collectors were sort of, looked at as a little strange.
I'd imagine having the quantifiable, here's the grade, it's authentic, might make it,
yes,
and it is a genuine mint error as opposed to most damaged.
Yes, yeah, the authenticity factor.
Mm-hmm. Any other comments? I mean, is there a phenomenon where there'd be like an off-center Lincoln cent in a mint state 65 versus 66, 67? I mean, is there like, are there guides that would tell you, here's the bump in each of these grades, or are people trying to play the crack out at all?
That's nobody does any crack out grading games with errors that I know of, because really, if you kind of like my point before, if it's say 64 to 67, I might pay a little bit of a premium for a 67, but generally speaking, most of the time you're not going to, and most errors come uncirculated. So usually you're dealing in the 63 to 67 range, all the time. So it's kind of more, like you say, just knowing that it's a legitimate mint error, and you've got your third party grading backing it up.
Super cool. I had alluded it in the previous point, but watching for counterfeit errors, that is a big problem here, especially if you're new. I might personally, miss a well created error, though there's probably some that are really bad, others that are pretty sort of challenging to identify. But what would you tell people about the fakes?
I think it's not a huge problem. Obviously, the coin market in general has had to deal with counterfeits for, I guess, ever. Here in recent years, there's been some false die counterfeits coming from China, and you see them pop up on eBay fairly regularly. They're usually more key date Lincolns that have been struck off center. But, if you look closely, the details don't look right. The bust of Lincoln doesn't appear correct. And there's been other counterfeits in the past. Back in the 60s, there was a group of silver quarters come to mind, and some wheat cents that were double struck or triple struck, where the original coin and the original strike were normal and legitimate, but then they were struck off center by counterfeit false dies, and they are very deceiving. So if you're looking at, say, eBay, and you see some dramatically struck cent or quarter that's an earlier date from the 50s or 60s, and it's not certified, then that should raise red flags. Not to say it's not going to be good, but it's always something that's good to keep in the back of your mind. Just like with regular coin collecting, you just have to keep an open mind and make sure that you're not setting yourself up to get burned because you think, oh, well, this looks like a really good deal. Well, other people may have realized, well, that coin's no good, so.
Yeah, no, there can definitely, it reminds me, the first bonus that I received for like more than $100 was, I had been searching a bunch of pennies for somebody. I pulled out something that looked like a really dramatic error. They sold it to another dealer for, over $1,000. And so the dealer was very happy, gave me something, and then it turned out that it was, man-made and had fooled somebody who was quite knowledgeable. So they can definitely exist. Do you have sort of a cap where, you also have a lot more sort of understanding? Would it be in the like the $200 or $300 range, where at that point you're saying, hey, I'm probably not going to purchase this error that's not certified? Or how maybe
I rely, well, on my own judgment. I've been around a while, so I think it's just more specific pieces that I see raise a red flag, and I guess you just have to scrutinize them a little more closely. And I guess I should probably say, going along with counterfeit errors, where you have, like you mentioned, maybe a damaged coin, or say, two normal coins that were hit by a hammer, where it looks like a Brockage or a double strike or something like that, where they're maybe not even created to deceive, but just somebody horsing around in their garage one day. And I think that kind of goes back to, I think it was point number one, is just understanding what a legitimate error should look like, and different diagnostics that you can use if something's in question. Because sometimes you'll see something that even to an experienced person can look legitimate at first glance, but if you study it a little more, you'll realize that it's no good.
Gotcha. That's helpful. There's also the topic, just in general, of proof errors. Some different stories have circulated about proof errors in overall, but I don't know if you have anything specific to say.
Sure. So there's quite a number of proof errors on the market. As of late, they're have been in the past as well. Proof errors technically cannot legitimately leave the mint if they can't fit inside of the plastic holder that holds proof sets. Excuse me. So if you have a coin that's larger than normal diameter because it's, struck off center, double struck, whatever, that it is probably not a legit mint error that left the mint accidentally. Not to say that a nice proof error, I personally have no problem collecting proof errors, even though I know they might have been made and probably smuggled out intentionally. We talked before that you said that if it leaves the mint, it's fair game, and I agree with that. But it's just something to know that, generally speaking, this particular piece that you have up here could legitimately leave the mint because it could fit in a proof set holder. But there are some error collectors out there. I know this more so maybe in the past, where they wouldn't touch a proof error because they would think it wasn't made accidentally. But there's some really dramatic proof errors right now, and if you were that are available for sale right now, and if you were looking to get one, now is definitely the time, because there is a whole bunch out there. And then there's the infamous San Francisco safe deposit box hoard, which I could touch on briefly. I've only heard these tales secondhand, but apparently there was a large group of proof errors that was in a safe deposit box where the rent wasn't paid. It got turned over to the state of California. They auctioned the coins, and they were bought by a California jewelry dealer. And then somehow they ended up getting sent to the Treasury, and they were returned as being legal to own. That's my understanding of the story. And then they were dispersed into the market.
Gotcha.
So there is, precedent, I guess, of the government essentially signing off on proof errors that they're okay to own. So
interesting. It's always with these rare coins. I know the 1933 St. Gaudens, there's the Farouk example that was legal and fair game, but then there's the 10 that were confiscated. So
right.
No, for these, proof error collectors, that it seems like they're safe for the time being.
I think so. I think lately they're much more, from my understanding, that they're a little more relaxed in their position on ownership of proof errors today than they were in the past. But things can change.
Yeah, maybe some good opportunities for people to pick one up. Here's our last one. Do you have a plan? So always important to have a plan when collecting, and I think a lot of that's probably involved in understanding and really going through the steps. This video, a good starting point for the people who are with us at this point in the video. But maybe how do you think about planning out your error collection, or some advice for other people to do so?
My excuse me, my plan originally was I had no plan. So I knew I liked certain error types, which for me is mainly double, multiple strikes, wrong planchet, off metal errors, and off centers. And so I just sort of buying what I thought looked cool, and that was kind of my collection. Is I think it looks cool. So I've never really had much of a cohesive plan, but I think it's nice to have a plan. Like if you wanted to collect, off center cents by date or mint mark, that's a nice way to hunt, and you can make I've seen some really nice sets of specific errors done in dates or even denomination sets. Like I say, if you wanted every denomination of coins struck on a cent planchet, so you get a nickel, dime, quarter, $half, dollar of whatever year, or even undated, but on a cent planchet, and you can make a nice set that way. So I think having a plan can be good, but you don't necessarily need one. But it's probably something to think about if you were going to get a little more serious.
Cool. And maybe as a closing question, oftentimes people say you should save up, if you have $1,000 as your budget, buy like 3 really nice coins instead of $20, $50 coins. Or if you have, same thing applies to a $100,000 budget, focus on a few really rare things instead of, hundreds of $100 coins. How would you sort of, do you think that that holds true for error collecting? And then also, how do you identify these really quality errors that are worth paying up for, and maybe leaving some other ones that don't have the, necessarily, both of the coins are priced at $1,000, but which ones are you going after?
To use your example of, say, a coin priced at $1,000, it's a weird dynamic where some errors, just because the type of error is not as popular, might be way more rare at the same price point just because it isn't as popular. So oftentimes, you might get a better rarity at $1,000, but it might not be as desirable to other people, even though it's more rare, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. And so, yeah, probably having a pulse on what's popular. You were saying the double struck might be sort of in, or the cuds and die breaks like can maybe fluctuate in terms of what's hot and what has liquidity, which is probably also important, but also some topics that would be, maybe we need more time to elaborate on. But maybe if you have anything else in conclusion, I think this is a great start. 10 important pieces of advice. I've learned a lot from our chat. But before we sign off, anything you'd want to mention?
I would just say that I find obviously errors quite fascinating, and there seems like there's always something new around the corner. There's always, just some surprise that's waiting, whether it be a new error type that comes out or, something dramatic that appears on the market. And I think that errors are a lot of fun in that you can kind of really do whatever you want in terms of collecting. And I guess for me, I'm really interested in the minting process, kind of like in point number 1. So I like seeing where things go wrong. So I would hope other people might watch this video and decide, even if they don't want to, specialize in errors, that they might buy an error or two just to have in their collection. You can get into something nice, like an off-center cent mentioned before, for not too much money. And, they're pretty cool to look at. So hopefully other people might check them out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Travis. And I think we had talked, maybe we can do a few more in the future and continue to give people the experienced and really experienced perspective that I don't have and really enjoy showcasing on the channel. So I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching the video. I'd encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel to stay updated. I've also got Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, so you can follow me there. TreasuretownYT.com is the main channel website. Definitely give that a visit. I've got a lot of information about me up there and the channel. CoinGrabBag.com as well currently redirects there, but it's some good opportunities for very fair grab bags, both made by me and other sellers. A lot of different options, so that's a good way to support. There's also TreasuretownCoins.com. In the future, my coin dealing operation will be done out of that website. CoinMeltPrice.com for updates on the melt prices of your coins, both US and world. A lot of resources in that website. And then CoinsMetalsCards.com, being developed right now as a marketplace and news source for coins, metals, cards, and collectibles in general. So I'll see you on my future videos. Looking forward to seeing you there, and hope you have a good day.